You're listening to She's the Business podcast. Awesome. So I'm here with the lovely Heather Esposito. Heather, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. I love our conversations.
Yes, me too. We had a really cool conversation on Heather's podcast, the Sweet Freedom podcast, which I'll make sure is linked up in the show notes, where she was sort of diving into my money archetypes. And then I was like, this is such a great conversation. And I really need to bring it over here to She's the Business and have that chat, because I think, you know, money is something in all of our lives. And I don't think we really talk about it enough. Like, I think that it's starting to. I'm noticing a shift and change and people becoming a little bit more comfortable than definitely when I was growing up. It was just taboo to talk about this stuff. But I feel like I am only just scratching the surface of my learning and understanding of, you know, not like currency and what money is, but kind of how it works in our lives. And that's why I thought, you know, what a brilliant person to bring onto the podcast and share this with the audience. And I'm going to learn so much as well. So before we get into that though, Heather, you know, you are a money relationship coach, but I'd love you to just introduce us in your own words, what you do in your business, who you help, and how do you help them?
Yeah. So I want to say, Jessica, as I dive into that, I think you said it's in such a beautiful way of like, it's not so much about understanding like how to do the currency, but how does money interact and how do we interact with it in our lives? And that for me is what I love to help women with. So I work with women entrepreneurs and helping them to heal their relationship with money, because we all have a relationship with money. And if we have a business, whether we want to or not, we have to interact with money. And I've worked as a coach I'm trying to think. I started off as a therapist. I worked as a therapist at a group home for adolescent girls. And then I became a health coach. I became a chef. I became a gluten-free, allergen-friendly bakery owner. And then I worked as a coach for Tony Robbins. And then I left and went on my own. And through all of those things, money was present in all of them. And I've had so many different iterations in my own relationship with money throughout them. And I can look back over that whole story of going from therapist to health coach and to bakery owner, you know, and see how much my relationship with money impacted each of those decisions. And in many ways, at that point in time for me, it was very disempowering because my relationship with money was crap, to be very generous to myself. It was terrible. And I'll get into that when I explain the archetypes. But I really realized that I need to shift and change my relationship with money. And when I became a health coach, I started teaching cooking lessons and I had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't even know how to hold a knife properly. And it's so funny because I think back to my first cooking lessons and I just like, oh, sweet Heather. that was so cute. But now that I know how to cook properly and stuff, I know that I can teach people, like, you know, if I wanted to still teach people how to cook. But what's interesting, Jessica, is when I was teaching cooking lessons and I really didn't know what I was doing, I didn't care so much about it. Like, I didn't care that I didn't know that much. Like, I was just so excited about what I was teaching that I just wanted to teach it. Because I was like, nobody knows how to cook, so I need to teach them, even if I just know 2 or 3 things more than they know.
Yeah.
And as I've shifted into teaching about the money archetypes and helping women to heal their relationship with money, I have had to confront so many things inside of me because I think, okay, the how-to of stuff, I can't tell you about money. Like, that is not my forte. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. What I can do is help people heal their relationship with money. But there's such a stigma that maybe I've put on myself. I think that it's society too. And so many people are like, well, you know, they haven't made millions of dollars, so don't listen to them. And when we look at the archetypes, like each of them has different things that make them feel abundant too. And so to only listen to one type, that for them, their driver could be that having a lot of money makes them feel abundant. But for another one, it doesn't. And my archetype, like having a ton of money doesn't make me feel abundant. And I'll go through and explain all of those. But really, to summarize, like we were saying, the short answer is I help women heal their relationship with money, and women entrepreneurs specifically, and so that they can have a safe, peaceful, calm, and relaxed relationship with money, no matter how much or how little they have. Because having money doesn't mean you have a good relationship with it. Not having money doesn't mean you have a bad relationship with it either. It's all about your own personal relationship with it.
I love to hear that as well, because I think we automatically judge it based on how much you have. And,
Yes.
when you think about that, as you were talking then, I was thinking, it is crazy because someone could have a lot of money in the bank and have cash, but other people might have a lot of assets and they might actually be almost presenting like they have almost no money or feel very skint because they don't have a lot of cash in their account, but they might have properties and assets and have been investing their money. And it's like, wealth is not just one thing. It is so many different things. And I really love the concept that we have a relationship with money, and it's then, I guess, presented in our life, and it is coming through in our reality, and that we all have one. And I really am interested in this because I know that it doesn't matter who it is who's listening right now, you have a relationship with money, and you're going to learn something about your own relationship through this discussion. But I wanted to ask you, how did you get into this? Because it's such a intriguing background that you have, gluten-free bakery, and then now we're coaching people and you're a money relationship coach. So how did you discover this, and how did you discover this kind of, passion and insight and knowledge that you have? Did it sort of just come about through some self-reflection, or, what happened in your background?
Yeah. So I had worked as a coach, like I had mentioned, for Tony Robbins. And in that time, I was getting frustrated with the coaching world because, well, I'll back up. Therapy is often, let's talk about your past over and over and over again. And nothing changes. And coaching is, let's forget about your past and let's just move forward. And you can't do that. You cannot just act like the past didn't happen. You have to be able to heal that. And so I was getting frustrated within the coaching world. And at that time, a friend had introduced me to energy healing, which I thought was a bunch of horseshit. I didn't believe in it at all. And when she offered to do some work on me, I said yes, because she said that wouldn't have to do anything for it, that she would do everything remotely. I thought it was ridiculous. But because I didn't think it would do anything for me positively, I also then was like, well, it's not going to do anything negative. So whatever, she can waste her time doing it. But it's crazy, Jessica, because I felt such a big shift, even though I didn't believe in it at all. And so I started exploring that. And that's when I decided to leave coaching for Tony Robbins, because I wanted to incorporate those tools into my work with clients and get into doing more subconscious work. And that led me down the path of like understanding nervous system regulation, like I mentioned, subconscious work, all this stuff. And in that time, there was a pattern that I saw with everybody that I worked with, is their relationship with money. And somehow, I think maybe 2012, 14, I learned about Kendall Summerhawk, and she's the creator of the Sacred Money Archetypes. And so flash forward to 2018-ish, I had a manila folder that I was going through of all this coaching stuff, and I found some cards from her. And I was like, let me look up and see what, like, these things, if she's still teaching these things, and get more information. Well, she had shifted and started teaching about the money archetypes, which was like the cards that I had found. They were like maybe 4 like little archetype things. And she had expanded this. And when I read it, I'm such a geek for personality assessments and for frameworks, because they just help us to shift so much faster than like, okay, let me just think about this on my own. And so when I read the frameworks of the money archetypes, it was like the heavens opened up for me, because it made so much sense for me why my relationship with money was the way that it was. And I had gone to Tony Robbins' Wealth Mastery in 2012. And Jessica, I cried the entire time, because it was just all about, here's what to do with your $100,000. Here's what to do with your $500,000. And I'm like, okay, what about those of us who don't have that? And it wasn't anything about anybody's relationship with money. It was just all about how to with money. And I'm like, I'm so far behind that. Like, I'm not, that is not like that. That's like stuff that, if you look at a building, right, you have to get the foundation done first. And my foundation would not support having that kind of money. And so just hearing about the archetypes just made so much sense for me. And I was like, this is something that I can absolutely like sink my teeth into. And like I mentioned, when I started teaching cooking, I was like, I don't fully know what I'm doing, but I know I'll learn along the way. And that's kind of, where I've come from. This is like, I don't have to be perfect. And, I need to be on the journey. And one thing that I'm really great at is helping women to see where their blocks are, subconscious blocks, help them to create a space where they can, like, we can work together to clear them out. And so I combine the energy work with therapeutic tools, with some coaching. So I use so many different modalities to be able to help women to connect with money better. And understanding the money archetypes, I feel like, is the first part in helping you to heal your relationship with money. And I feel like it's something that most people, I mean, I know that there's people that talk about it, but it's, I'm in that world, but most people aren't talking about it. And so when you can understand, oh, this is like how I'm wired, and these are my empowering traits and my disempowering traits, then it makes it so much easier to then shift and change and know, okay, wait a minute, I'm going into this disempowering trait. Let me go into this empowered version of me. And I wish it was that easy, right? That we can just switch and be like, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing that thing. Let me shift. But that's where the subconscious work comes in, and doing that deeper work so that it's easier to step into those empowering traits of the archetypes. But a lot of times people are like, I don't know, I'm just bad with money. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, I just got off the phone with a client who has 2 young kids, and she, like many women, struggles with like, I don't want to stay home with my kids all the time. Like, I want to work. And she's like, I know that's probably bad. And I was like, no. I said, in her top 3 archetypes is ruler. And the ruler, and which I'll get into, is the empire builder. And they love to work. And I was like, you're not bad. I'm like, it's just part of how you're designed. So we just need to create your world that it works for you and everybody in your family.
Yeah, that's so true. And, you do hear some stories of people, because, I guess the question in the back of my mind was, before we dive into what the archetypes are, sort of like, why is it so important to know this? Because I'm guessing most of the population are walking around out there completely oblivious that there are archetypes, oblivious as to what their money personality is, and saying things like, well, I'm just bad with money, or I can never save, or I'll never be wealthy, or whatever, all of these sort of really absolute things that we're saying about our situation, and based on whatever we believe, usually the past and the environment that you're in. Mm-hmm. But you do hear stories sometimes of someone has an amazing win, like they might win a lottery, or they have a really, an inheritance or something, sort of a windfall comes through in terms of money. And some people are really great with it, and they, obviously that does give them the leg up and changes their life. And other people, it's just like, boom, it's like it's almost disappears, right? And that's always intrigued me so much, because it's like, how could that even happen? Like, if you get that and it happens amazingly, like, how could you possibly just have it disappear? And I know that there's some answers in what you're going to share, but yeah, like, tell me a bit about why it's so important to kind of know your archetypes.
Yeah. Well, each of them has their own set of, as I mentioned, empowering and disempowering behaviors. And as you're talking, I was thinking, like, they have their own pitfalls or potential pitfalls. Mm-hmm. And when you know what your potential pitfalls are, then you can know how to mitigate them. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you work with people with marketing, right? Yeah. And each archetype has their own reasons for fearing marketing. And so when you can understand them and you see them and you're like, oh, yes, I absolutely do that, then you can mitigate it and understand. Then one of the things I teach in my courses on the marketing section is like, what are the reasons that you're afraid of it and why you're really great at it? And so oftentimes we don't hear that and be like, oh, wait a minute, I can do this because this is this and this. And that kind of like puts the wind in your sails, right? To know, oh, wait, I can do this. Sometimes we just need to hear somebody say that, like, here's your strengths. Let's use those things. And so a lot of us it's so important because a lot of us walk around with, oh, I'm bad, I'm this, and we say all these negative things about us instead of, okay, wait, these are my great traits and this, let me live in this strength. And I think we're living in a time where people are paying so much more attention to these different type assessments like human design, enneagrams, strength finders. Like I was certified in disc personalities, gosh, almost 30 years ago now, and I'm getting old. But I love that because, again, like when I first learned about my personality type in the DISC assessment, are you familiar with that one?
Yes, I am. I'm trying to think. I'm always going like, which one was I again? I think I can never remember that one. I think I always remember Myers-Briggs and I remember human design. Yeah. The DISC one, for some reason, I've got like a little brain thing that goes, right. I read it and then I instantly forget it.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And for me, what stood out when I learned about that one, and that was the first time I had ever been exposed to any of these types of frameworks, was that I had always thought that I was so boring and I was just not the type of person that anybody really wanted to be around, because I am more of an introvert and I am somebody who loves deep conversation. And I'm not the life of the party. And in my mind, my model of the world, fun people are the life of the party. And if you're not the life of the party, then you're boring. And when I learned about the DISC stuff and I understood that I have more of the C-type personality, I'm a who, what, why, when, where, how type of person. And I definitely struggle with, like, if I can't do it right, I'm not going to do it. And even just knowing that, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't have to be like that, Heather. Like, you can do it. And where I might not be the life of the party, I am the person that people come to when they need a solid person there for them. Yeah. And I was like, man, that's pretty powerful, because in the long run, I'm going to be in that person's life where the life of the party, I'm not bad mouthing people who are life of the party, but like, I know that I go deep with people. And I was like, I really like that. And so it helped me to see my strengths, because all I could ever see were my pitfalls.
I love that. That's so true. Yeah. And it's like, you were saying before how we have that view of, thinking about money, and it's like you'll always see your pitfalls or the things that you think are bad about it. And you said the same thing people think about marketing, they, reasons why they don't like it. And it always makes me laugh, because I kind of go, everybody has been doing marketing pretty much your entire life. You just didn't realize that you've been doing it, and you actually are good at it. It's just that you're placing some sort of filter on it now when it comes to your business or your life, and making judgments about it and deciding that, you're not this or that and not a promo person. It's like, but just think, anytime you've invited somebody to a party that you're holding, like your birthday party when you're 7 years old, up to your 21st or whatever your wedding, whatever it was that you've done, that is marketing. You have invited them to your party, and in doing so, you have been marketing. And that's really all it is. And have we ever felt any of these fears or discomforts or anything when we think about it like that? Well, no, like we've kind of gone, great, I'm having a party, come along. You're excited about it. But then you apply it in a different situation, and then they're, brandishing marketing with a whole different brush almost when it comes into business. And it's sort of similar with money, right? We kind of do the same thing.
Yeah. And with marketing, it's interesting because in the past, however many years, if you have an online business, it's like, this is how you're supposed to market. And for so many of us in the feminine space, that just doesn't feel aligned. It doesn't feel right the way that people are saying this is how you should do it. And definitely the tide is changing there. And it's understanding, okay, this is who I am, and this is what is in alignment for me. And so when you can speak from that place, like you said, you can market to anybody, can market. It's just it's what's your come from place. And when you're trying to come from a place that is not authentic to you, then it is going to feel icky. And when you're working with a coach who doesn't understand like the different archetypes and what your personality is, and they try to get it through what works for you, for them, like you're never going to get anywhere. I remember I had a coach once. I had spent, it was like $27,000 for the year of coaching with her. And I don't really feel like I took anything away from it except for how to make Google Drive documents. And also, that was really the biggest thing that I took away from it. But also, she had said one time during our call, she's like, well, Heather, she's like, I realized that with you, if you don't feel in alignment with it, you're never going to do it. And I thought, well, I mean, isn't that everybody? But apparently, I think I've just been in this game for so long that I just speak up now, where before I just like keep my mouth shut. But now I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I got to figure out a way to make it work for me. And that's why understanding these archetypes is so helpful, because you can be like, oh, you're this type. Okay, take this approach. And it just makes everything so much easier because you're living according to you and your design instead of what somebody else is telling you to do.
Yeah, so totally agree with that. And I'm always the one of like, there is never one way. You know, there's a way that someone has that's worked for them, but you're not the same as them. So it's like, you know, every time I see people kind of trying to reverse engineer something someone else has done, I'm always like, please don't. Like, reverse engineer it in terms of you want to pick it apart and see what the pieces are, but don't try to take it all, plug it into your business, because it's like you've got your puzzle here and they've got their puzzle and you've picked up one of their pieces and you're trying to make it fit into your one. It's like, it's a totally different puzzle. Like, they're not even designed to be the same. So yeah, I love that, this whole approach of always make your choices based on you and align with you. And you know, and now I would love you to dive into, you know, the money archetypes, because I think knowing your own archetypes means that you're then able to make the choices for yourself that are in alignment with you, which, you know, of course are going to just have a much better outcome, right? When we are aligned and when you're understanding of, I guess, why you are where you are and what your natural actions are doing, can make such a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I will dive into these. And before I do, I will say, if you listen to them, of course, be thinking of yourself and which ones you resonate with. And also think of people in your world. And as you hear them, you might hear one archetype and you're like, that's not me at all. But then you think, oh, that's my partner. That's my mother. That's my, you know, my kid. And you can also see why that person might drive you nuts when it comes to money stuff, because they might be a completely different archetype than you. Yeah. And I know I think you said we'll put in show notes the link to the money archetype quiz where you can take it and then learn about what your top archetypes are. And then there's a 4 video series for each of the 8 archetypes. So each archetype has their own video set. If you don't want to skip the videos and just go to the workbook that has all the information, you could do that. But it's really fun because they're done in different sets, different outfits according to each archetype. And so remember that as I go through these, you're typically a blend of the top 3. So you may listen to one and be like, oh, I like almost all of that, but not that one thing. And that's normal because we're not always just one thing. Okay, so we're going to start first.
Like, typically a top 3, you say, but then, like, I remember when I did mine, I had a tie for my 3rd place. So I kind of had a top 4. And I think that what I love about that is that we're not absolute just one. It's like you are a blend of some. And so, you know, as Heather's going to talk through them, it's like, listen out for the ones, the plural, that kind of feel the most, you know, aligned for you or the most like you, because you will be a blend of them, won't you?
Yeah. And I think ultimately it's not about putting ourselves in a label and being like, well, I'm a this or I'm a that, right? It's just listening to the traits and be like, oh yeah, that is an empowering trait that I have, or that's a disempowering trait that I have. And to be able to identify them instead of just being like, well, I'm just a, you know, whichever archetype. And then like, you know, play victim, be like, I can't be successful because I'm this. And it's like, no, like everybody can like be successful. It doesn't matter which archetype. And so if there's a tie, when you do the quiz, one of the things that I say, and I think I say in the videos or in email or something, is that you can ask yourself, which of these ties that I have, which of these do I need at this moment to do the thing that I want to do? And so for you, your tie is between a ruler and connector. And most people, when they have a connector in their top 3 scores, they tend to have a lot of scores really close together because the connector is the chameleon. And I'll go deeper into this, but it's not uncommon for someone who has a connector in their top 3 to have ties or have really, really close scores. And so if you resonate with that and be like, man, like, why are my scores so close? It's the connector is, as I mentioned, the chameleon, and they're the ones who they can connect with the disempowering and empowering traits of all of, or majority of each of the archetypes. Not bad, not good. It just is. And just ask whenever you're doing something, like if you're sitting down to do marketing, okay, which archetype do I need to pull up right now to sit at the table and to do this job?
Yeah. And to just be present sometimes if it's feeling hard. It's like, okay, who's driving the bus right now? Like, have I got someone in the driver's seat that's maybe not helping me, and maybe even just kind of getting present to that? I'm not sure how we can change who's in the driving seat. Maybe you've got some tips for us, but let's get into what are these 8 archetypes? I'm excited.
Okay, so we're going to start with the accumulator, which is your top one. And the accumulator is the banker. They are the fiscally savvy, love-saving money member of the archetype family. They're the ones who fear running out of money, and they can tend to get stuck in analysis paralysis because they want to make sure that they're making the right decision. And so out of all of the archetypes, they're the most responsible with money because to them, money is a tool. They understand how to work it, how to make it grow, and how to protect it. They feel the most abundant when they're living below their means and they have what to them is a healthy savings account. And that could be completely different for everyone. I had this client who had gotten let go of her W-2, and she had already started a business, but she didn't want to focus solely on her business. But she's like, I only have $150,000 in savings. I can't live off of that, right? Where other archetypes would be like, that's plenty of money. But for her accumulator, not enough at all. So their big lesson with money is that the energy of money is here to create freedom. Right, because they tend to hoard it, and when they're in the disempowered state, they're enslaved by getting more and more and more because the more they have, the more safe they feel. Right? So that's the accumulator. And then the next one, and I go in alphabetical order of these. So the next one is the alchemist, and the alchemist is the idea generator. They are the inner idealist. They are the out of the box thinker. They're the ones who have a love-hate relationship with money because they love that money can create transformation. They hate that money has been used for harm. And so they get it confused, the money with the people who did the bad. And so they go back and forth of loving and hating money. And they are really great at empowering other people and helping other people to see how great they are. Yet they often get stuck in monetizing any of their millions of ideas because they just like a faucet that ideas just flow through. And they oftentimes don't think that having an idea is something that they can earn money from, because our world is so big on you have to complete a project, to be paid instead of you get paid for your idea of the project. And so the alchemist does attract money in unusual ways. And out of all the archetypes, they have the most magical relationship with money because they can manifest money whenever they need it. And they have these fun stories to share about ways that money just magically showed up at the right moment that they needed it. And they have so much evidence from the universe that they're supported. And for them, abundance isn't about having a ton of money in their bank account. They feel the most abundant when they're in the flow of life, when they're allowing magic to happen, and when they get to share their ideas with the world. And so their big lesson with money is to understand that their ideas are valuable.
That's such a, I was just thinking as you were talking, so often people will be like, oh, money, it's almost like money is bad because of what things people have done with it. And it's like, well, it's not the money that's bad. The money was just a tool. It was the person using the tool. Like you can take any tool out of a toolbox and someone could, take a hammer out and build a house with banging nails with it, or they could take a hammer and, murder somebody, and it's the same tool, two totally different things. And I can really see that the alchemist being almost afraid to monetize their ideas because of that whole thing about, but money has done some bad things. It's like, well, the money hasn't. It was that there was somebody else using the tool and using it in a way that wasn't cool.
Exactly. Yeah,
Mm,
exactly. I think about that all the times with knives. Like as a chef,
mm,
I love a good knife and I love a good sharp knife. And
mhm.
if that's taken out of context, somebody can say, "Oh, look, she said that. Like she wants to do evil with it." No, like having a good sharp knife when
Yes.
you're cooking makes all the difference in the world. And it's one of the
Mm,
reasons when I used to teach cooking lessons and I go to people's homes and cook with them, I'm like, this is why you hate cooking because your knife is crap. Like you don't know how to use your knife is so not sharp.
mm.
And so, yeah, it makes sense. And so it's always, it's the thing, it's the intention behind it is
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So after the alchemist, we have the celebrity. And the
Mhm.
celebrity is the inner star. They're the ones of all the 8 archetypes who have the most joyful and generous relationship with money. They love the doors that money can open, and they're not afraid to use it to open doors. And
Mm.
they sometimes have problems spending money. Not they sometimes have problems spending money even if they don't have it, because if something will enhance their image, they're like, yep, here we go. Here's the card. Right.
Right.
So they feel the most abundant when they're in the spotlight. They love to turn on the bling. They are not afraid to live a 5-star life, and they want the people that they love to come along with them. Celebrities are great at marketing because marketing is all about putting yourself out there, right? Being seen. And celebrities are like, look at me. Like they love this. And I have a client who is a celebrity archetype. It's a male client. And as we talked through this, and he started realizing that it was okay for him to admit that he wants to be the face of the business. He doesn't really want to do the work behind the business. And that has freed him up so much that some of the things that he's been setting up in his business are setting him up. So down the line, all he has to do is just be the face of it. And he's like, this is
Mm.
what I was born to do. He's like, put me on video, put me in front of people to talk. I could do that all day long. And
Yeah,
that was
right.
him embracing his inner celebrity. And
Ah, so
so
interesting.
yeah. So the celebrity's big lesson with money is to understand that they can accumulate wealth and be admired and valued for who they are rather than what they have. Because as I
Mm.
mentioned, they tend to see the status things as what gives them worth instead of actually who they are has inherent worth.
Yeah. Hmm. That's so interesting. I was like, because I don't relate a lot at all to the celebrity. I'm not sure where that was in my, how, what number that came
Mhm.
up for me. But as a marketer, I'm like, oh, like, how did I even get into marketing when that is not my thing at all? I think that there's a lot of people who love sales who probably would be in that place, because they really are the forefront. And then a lot of, I guess when you're in business, marketing, where we're often behind the scenes doing things. But yeah, there was so much in when you're talking about the accumulator. I was like, oh my goodness, that is just so
Mhm.
me for a lot of it. Things like, with my business, I wasn't ever in debt. Like I started the business just using money that I had, and it was money that I could afford to lose. It wasn't like I needed this money to live on or
Right.
anything like that. So always like living within my means, never in credit card debt, always like, and that's kind of, to me, I was like, isn't that how we just live life? And so it's bizarre then when I learned,
No.
no, actually, that's not how a lot of people do things.
No, not at all. Which is a good segue into talking about the connector, because the connector is definitely not one that lives life like that when it comes to money, when they're in the disempowered state. And the
Mhm.
connector, as we already mentioned, is one of your ties in your
Mm.
third place. And so the connector is the relationship creator. They are the counselor, the cheerleader, the problem solver. They are the ones who freely give away their time and ideas and advice. And they just believe that they're always going to be taken care of. And of the 8 archetypes, they have the most complex relationship with money because if we're up to them, money just wouldn't exist. They would just rather not think about it. And they struggle to charge for their services because everybody that they meet becomes their new best friend.
Mm.
For connectors, abundance isn't about having a ton of money in their bank account. They feel the most abundant when they're helping people to transform their world and make an impact. Then they're making an impact on people's lives. Because for them, life is just all about relationships, relationships, relationships. It's people, people, people. And so their big lesson is to understand that they can create financial independence through the value of relationships. And the connector is my top one. And so, I mentioned, like, for me, I just was always like, whatever, it'll be taken care of. When I took the leap to leave Tony Robbins, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to make money. I did not have a healthy savings account, like, as a cushion or anything like that. And I was just like, whatever. I know enough people. I'll be fine. And for so long, I didn't look at money the way that I'm looking at it now. Like, now I have weekly money dates, and I've created and cultivated a relationship with money. And that's a big thing for connectors, because they're all about relationships, yet they avoid money because they don't have a relationship with it. Yeah. And what I've learned as a connector is that I can connect with money, with the energy of money. And the more that I do, the more that I can be empowered. And the more that I can be empowered, the more people I can empower. Excuse me. And so I've really had to do a lot of work to cultivate that relationship, but it's been easier knowing, wait a minute, I'm really great at relationships. There's no reason why I can't have a relationship with money.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So interesting, because, like, obviously that is in my top 3. And so a lot of what you said, I was resonating with, in that I do have, and it was weird because it was only yesterday I was reflecting on some other things in my life and in the past, of, like, just this feeling that, it'd always be taken care of. It'd always be fine. And, like, I can see that looking back, through my childhood, absolutely. But interesting, at the same time, it was like, but that feeling of knowing that there's enough in the bank always being there too. And so, even as a child, I didn't get pocket money. My parents didn't really believe in it. And we went through the 80s depression. There was all sorts of things that happened there. It was like a tough time, but it was still always taken care of. Like, it always just, life went on, even though there might have been some financial pressures and struggles. That was sort of that world I grew up in. And so when I started to earn money and have, my first paper round, and then I worked at McDonald's when I was really young, like 15. But I sat, it all just accumulated in my account. I was really good at saving. And even though I'd spend, it was never more than what I'd accumulated. But at the same time, I think I often would just feel like it's just okay. I don't need to look at it every day. I don't need to, like, keep tabs on it, because I just know I have more than enough. And so I can kind of see this connector thing coming in, which is something I then have to almost force myself to think, like, and I am not where you are yet in terms of having a weekly money date, but, like, to, I should be doing that in my business, like, sit down and, like, actually just go through and see where I'm at. But I've always just got this, like, eternal belief, everything's fine. It'll all be taken care of. And it's such an interesting balance, isn't it? Because I've got these two very different kind of forces at play in how that relationship with money is.
And I think it's beautiful. I always tell people that you don't need to have archetype envy, because every archetype has their own empowering, like I said, and disempowering things. And so they all have different things that they bring to the table. And I hear you, and I'm thinking, man, I wish I had more accumulator in me, because I wouldn't have gotten into the messes that I've gotten into financially if I had been more mindful of it. Because my combination is, I have connector, I have alchemist that we've already talked about, right? So there, 2 of those are just like, whatever, we'll be taken care of. It'll be fine. I've had to really cultivate the accumulator in me to sit down and have these money dates and track and have spreadsheets. And now I get excited to sit down. Like, I'm so excited that we're halfway through the year. And I know that as long as I keep up what I'm doing, when it gets to the end of the year, my spreadsheet to send to my accountant for my taxes is going to be done because every week I'm having my money date. So I'm just tracking all my expenses, like, and, for my business and stuff. And I don't have to get in that stress state at the end of the year like I used to do. And so I love that I think it's great that you have that combination. They definitely can work together. And I know that oftentimes we think that they're conflicting, but there's always great reasons of why they work together. And so your second one is the Maverick, which we're going to talk about now. So this will throw in, some more spice into your archetypes. And so the Maverick is the rebel with a cause. They are the ones who want to be fully alive. They want to express their authentic truths. They want to help heal the world with their bold and courageous ideas. even if it means shaking things up. And really, if it means shaking things up, because they want to shake things up. And they believe that manifesting their dreams is possible, but they sometimes struggle with making progress because they get bored with what's working. And then they tend to move on to something else more exciting. I've had so many clients where they've had Maverick in their top 3 and they're like, oh my gosh, Heather, I can't tell you how many times I have created something in my business and it just starts to get momentum and it's just starting to make money. And then I pivot in my direction. And when they realize this, and I explain to them that for them, creating excitement in their life is much more valuable for them, and creating systems in their business so that they can have the freedom to chase excitement in their life is going to be much more empowering for them. They're like, oh, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. It's like the first few years of my business, I can just see it as like, woo, you know, and all that excitement. And I love developing the new thing. And then it's like, okay, I need to move on to the next exciting thing. And yes, it's interesting how true some of that can feel and how you can see it. I think I've managed to manage that part of the Maverick in me now, but it's taken years of like, okay, am I doing this because I want, it's an exciting and it is a good idea, but, you know, is this actually going to help me or is it going to hinder me and just take me off in a new direction again? And that does take a little bit of, you know, being able to, well, maybe a few experiences, but that insight and reflection and knowing that that is something that can happen as well, to recognize it, right?
Yes. And that's where, like you said, like where... for me, why I think it's so important in understanding this is just hearing that you can catch yourself and be like, okay, no, I'm going to stick with this thing until it gets momentum. And then once it gets momentum, then I can go do the next thing. But it's so easy to be like, up next. And that doesn't help.
Like, this isn't working. I need to like change. It's like, no, give it time. And it's like, when you start to understand, well, you actually need to see a certain volume through anything to really know whether it's working or not. Stop taking the very first, like, I put something out and this was what happened. It's like, well, therefore that's what's happening. It's like, no, that is the very first initial feedback that you're getting. But you need to do that way more times in order to make a judgment on whether that worked or didn't work. And it's so easy, I think, for us, especially in this fast-paced world, to just be thinking it's like instant. And I've really noticed it's like, wow, when you slow down, when you start tracking each week and then looking at the data, you know, you need to be doing this for a solid amount of time, you know, commit to doing it for 6 months, even a year with some things, depends on what it is. But, you know, gather that data, then you can look at the real numbers and make a decision and stop kind of going like, oh, well, you know, I had 15 people subscribe and 3 unsubscribe. Therefore, you know, I need to change something. It's like, well, that's only 15 people. Like, you know, we're not even at the number of being able to have a percentage there, because we need 100 to make a percent. And 100 is still really low. So it's like, let's not make any decisions until you get to that point. That's something that I'm, you know, always working on with my clients, is like, let's actually not chop and change until you've got some real data in place. And, you know, I'm interestingly not always a numbers person, but the power of the data and some data it just makes such a difference, because you can take the feeling and the emotion out of it and actually look at real facts. And then you can still apply on it, like whether you liked it or didn't like it, and the feeling and the emotion. But often we're creating that emotion or feeling or insight based on something that's very superficial or minor, and making it mean a lot more than what it really does.
Absolutely. I know I have a lot of Maverick in me as well. And when I created my Money Archetypes course, even just the quiz and the videos, like I mentioned, there's 8 videos, well, there's 8 archetypes and there's 4 videos for each archetype. So that's 32 plus videos.
Wow.
It was a lot of work, Jessica, a lot of work. It wasn't just one take, right? I learned so much along the way. And once it was done, there was a part of me that's like, okay, I'm done. Next. And I was like, Heather, you have got to stop doing that. Like, you just spent so much time. Like, you got to promote this, talk about this. And
Yeah.
the maverick in me is like, I'm bored with this. And I'm like, oh my gosh. The maverick and I had to have
Find a
some
way to get
conversation.
excited about it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So speaking of exciting, so with the maverick of all the archetypes, they are the ones who have the most exciting relationship with money, because for them, it's like being on this roller coaster where they can experience the financial highs and lows, and they're here for it all. Where the accumulator's like, let's just keep things steady, stable, and growing. The Mavericks like, woo, like whether it's going up or down, right? They love that, because for them, abundance isn't about having a ton of money in their bank account. They feel the most abundant when they're taking risks, when they're doing things differently than the status quo, and when they feel the thrill of excitement when they win big. And so their big lesson with money is to understand that they can stand out from the crowd while taking the easy route of investing in the tried and true.
Yeah. So do you find a lot of people with Maverick would do things like investing in the stock market and like taking those sort of risks where they might be like, well, just see what happens. And like, obviously it can kind of go either way, can't it? It can do that. My husband does that. Whereas I'm like, I leave that to him. Investing in the stock market is not the thing that really excites me, but he loves that type of thing. And I'm sure if I got him to do the quiz, I reckon Maverick would maybe be his number one.
Yeah.
Exciting.
That and they tend to fall for get rich quick type things, which again, having the Maverick, I'm like, oh, I can't even tell you how many times I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I cannot, not that I watch TV anymore. I don't even know if they have them on, but like, I cannot watch an infomercial because you can sell me on anything. And I'm just like, that's great. I can do it. I'm like, oh my gosh, Heather, stop. So yeah, the Maverick is like, whatever, it's money. We'll make it again. And they love to be able to prove that. They don't mind losing it all because they're like, whatever, I can totally bring it, like make it all again because I know that I'm the creator of this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Bring on more.
Yep. Yeah. So next we have the nurturer, which is a very big difference than the Maverick. So the nurturer is the caretaker. They're the loving helper. They're the kind-hearted, like loving, caring one who wants to be able to solve everybody's problems. They want to be able to nurture everybody, and they're cousins with the connector. So there's a lot of similarities and there's a bit of difference. So of all the 8 archetypes, they're the ones with the most loving and caring relationship with money. They are responsible for their money and they like to live within their means, and they do like to save. And they, though, can get stuck with attracting people who need their help financially or otherwise. If you hear stories, about an older woman who met somebody online and then somehow lost all her money because he needed help or she needed help, or, it's like they tend to be a nurturer type personality because they're like, oh, but they need my help. And they will put aside their own needs and wants for somebody else. And so they feel the most abundant when they're helping and caring for people, and they love being able to use money to be able to help and care for them. That's when they feel the most abundant. That's when they feel the most fulfilled. So their big lesson with money is to understand that creating clear money boundaries is a powerful way for them to demonstrate how much they care for others. And that's a hard one for nurturers because boundaries feels unkind to them, but boundaries are in fact the most kind thing that you can do in your business. I mean, and I was so guilty of this when I first started as a therapist, because I'm a connector, nurture, and alchemist, right? So that combination is just like, here, take everything from me. I'll just give it all to you. But I felt like I was supposed to save everybody. And I worked harder for everybody else than they did. And it took a good bit of time for me to be living in burnout. And I realized I can't do this. Like, I can't work harder for somebody to get better than they are. And now I love and care for people. And that shows up in me creating boundaries, in my business. And nurturers can tend to get resentful sometimes because they over deliver, but then that leads to feelings of being resentful or being a martyr. And once they understand, wait a minute, you're the one doing this. You're the one choosing to give away your time for free. Like, you cannot get resentful for somebody taking from you because you've taught them to take from you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the nurturer. And then we got two more. So we have the romantic, and the romantic is the ease and luxury lover. They're the ones who take pleasure in the moment. They are always enjoying the pleasures of life. They have this go with the flow attitude. They are the luxury lover who inspires other people to slow down, savor the moment, and just breathe. So they're all about using money to enjoy life. And details like knowing what's in the bank account, they'd just rather ignore. And of all the archetypes, as you could probably tell by now, they have a very laid back relationship with money. They don't have a problem spending money on things because they feel like they deserve it. And they love to spoil the people that they love with lavish or abundant gifts. And they're laid back about spending money because they have this deep knowledge that there will always be more and it will always work out perfectly for them. And it pretty much always does. So romantics feel the most abundant when they're experiencing leisure and not caring about money. So their big lesson with money is that they can use the energy of money to enjoy the best of life and create financial security. So both and, not an either or.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's so cool. I definitely can pick out some people in my family who are romantics, that I'm sure that they have that in them. And my husband's probably one, like we're always coming up with new plans for places that we'll go and things that we'll do. And he's, and money's never the objective, or the thing that has a problem in doing it. It's like, okay, no, when are we going to do this? Let's just make it happen.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. So last is the ruler, and that's the one that you have tied with your connector. And the ruler is the empire builder who knows what they want to create and they are willing to work to make it happen. They are the ones that other people will tell them that they're doing too much. And they're like, no, I could do so much more. And they are the ones that get frustrated because they may have an idea to do something. And if it's not done the next day, they're like, this isn't happening fast enough. One of my clients is a ruler. And so many of our conversations are on her being in alignment with time and the process of time, because she's like, why isn't it working faster? Why isn't the marketing strategy, like we just put it in place yesterday and it's 9 a.m. the next day and why aren't things showing up? And that's her ruler. And the rulers are really great because they know that they are born for big, great things and nothing will get in their way of doing it. And they want to build their empire their way. And they want to build an empire not only to empower themselves, but to empower other people. And of all the 8 archetypes, they have the most motivated relationship with money and they can manifest money whenever they want. They're the ones who see business ideas out of anything. You can tell them something that seems so simple and they're like, oh, here's how you can make money from that. And you're like, I would have never thought of that. They feel the most abundant when they're accomplishing big things and they're making a lot of money. And so their big lesson with money is to learn to innovate and to achieve and to empower with grace and ease. Sometimes they just want to rule instead of, let me do this in a way where I can enjoy my life and not work so hard that I'm so burnt out that I'm not going to enjoy it, because they can be so unstoppable. And you ask them, hey, what do you do for fun? And they're like, work. No, I said, what do you do for fun? And they're like, yeah, work. Like, what do you mean? Right? They love working, where the romantic that we just talked about is like, I don't really feel like it right now. And the rulers, I feel like it all the time. They just want to work all of the time.
That's so funny. I was just thinking there have been a lesson. One of the big ones that I've learned is just that I move a lot faster than a lot of other people. And I've really had to be mindful of that. And also, I might have gone, like, I need this done, or I want this to happen. And then if it's not happening as fast as I want it to, which is 99% of the time, to actually be like, is that actually a problem? Calm down, Jess. It's okay. Like, if that isn't done, this week, the world is not going to end. It's not going to really change anything. It's just that you want it done like yesterday. Yes, of course you do. But it like tempering that down has been, so important, because otherwise, you're just in this place and it's like, why is all of this? And why does it have to be done so instantly? And like, let's just chill a little bit and think about what the main priorities are. So that was been a huge thing that I've had to work on over the years, especially when you're managing people or, and obviously in your business, if you have VAs and things like that, it's like, I need to bring people along on the ride with me, not to be like so far out in front, shooting off things like, we need to do this and that. And they're just like, oh my God, what is going to come flying at me next? I have definitely been in that place before, and coming back and making sure we're all going together is definitely a lot better.
Yeah. And so what's great for you is having that ruler connector, right? The connector allows you to, okay, let me slow down a little bit. Let me connect with people. Let me see where they are. And then your maverick, it's like, okay, and how can we do this in a way that's going to be different than everybody else? That's going to be unique. That's going to be, break boundaries that haven't been broken before. And then your accumulator is like, okay, guys, like, make sure that we have this in place and this in place and this in place. And so that you're not running rogue all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's a great combination that you have.
It's so funny because, you can just see so many different, forces at play and those personalities in there. And it is really fun to kind of learn a bit more about it and see how they work together. So incredible. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think each one of them, it was really great to listen to and to, reflect on. And there's definitely, threads of them where you're going to feel like, I can really resonate with that one, or like there are little pieces out of it that you might notice at times. But you said you have a quiz that you can go through and actually get your own, find out your own archetypes and which ones are your top 3. Or
when you take the quiz, you'll get an email that'll have words are not working right now for me. You'll take the quiz and then you'll get all your archetypes. And I will say, because it's confusing sometimes for people, it has all the archetypes listed with the scores there. And you want to look at the top 3 scores, because the archetypes are listed in alphabetical order, not in the order of your top 3. So you want to look at the scores next to them to see your top 3 scores. And then you can you click on that link and it'll take you to the archetype. Listen to your top one first. You can listen to it on the go, while you're in your car. I'm the type of person, I don't like to be beholden to my computer if I don't have to be. So I will put things on 2x speed and listen through it. And there's also, like I mentioned, a workbook that's about 31 pages, I think, just all the information about all the archetypes. And again, it's so fascinating because you can have so much more grace for yourself, grace for other people. You can see the way that you do business, because how you do money is how you do everything. And so it shows up in so many areas. And so, like, me being a connector nurturer, I can't tell you, Jessica, how many times I would talk to somebody for the first time and be like, oh no, you know what? We can just do this session for free. Well, that's not a business. That's a charity. So like things like that when you realize, wait a minute, Heather, like, you want to create a business. Like, you can give away stuff for free. I do have clients that I do stuff pro bono with, but like, okay, that's where the podcast comes in. That's where, some of these other things. But like, if I'm creating a business, then being a connector and nurturer, I know that if I want to create a business that helps others, I need to be able to pay my bills. I need to be able to eat, right? And so it's not hurting someone by saying, here, this is the energetic exchange for it. I'm more saying that out loud for myself right now. I'm sure none of your listeners struggle with that at all.
No, I think it definitely is something, and I've definitely had clients who have felt that really strongly. We've had to do a lot of work around them, just changing that perspective. Like you said, you're already doing some stuff for free. So it's like, what is in the free bucket? It might be your podcast. You might have content that you put out there. More than likely, you're already doing things in that category that you're not actually, not that you're not aware that you're doing them, but you're not really seeing that as, well, that is what you're putting out there for free that people can have. And then, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you charging for your actual services, and that, in fact, not that there's nothing wrong with it. It's like you should be, because it's a business. This isn't,
right.
Unless you are just doing this from the good of your heart and not to create a business. But, even charities, they gain money in. Why? Because it allows them to grow and help more people. Like, even charities actually need funding. So
right.
It's like you're not a charity, and nothing in the world is free. It's just money is that tool. It's like that exchange between us. And so helping to shift some of that, I think just so important.
And that's where I feel like when I'm helping women in healing their relationship with money, I have a couple of different pillars. And can I share these real fast, just because they excite me so much? So the first pillar is to reclaim your relationship with money. It's just deciding something has to change, and it has to be me, and it has to be now. And under this pillar is where understanding your archetypes come in, because when you can understand, wait, these are the things that I need to change about myself. Right? These are the things that are disempowering me. These are the things that I want to step into to be empowered. And so that's the first pillar. And the second one is releasing what I call your heart wall. And this is a whole other long conversation, but it's an energetic wall that we put around ourselves that prevents us from experiencing the success, the abundance that we want. And that's, doing some energy work. And then pillar 3 is remembering the root cause of the emotional stress. And that's where I go with women and map out things that have been triggering for them around money. And we start at the current day and we go back all the way back to childhood. And just in that process is crazy, because then they're like, oh my gosh, from this, I created this story about this. And I never took the time to really even think about it. Right. And so just doing that remembering process is so powerful. And all of these, it's not like this is step by step by step. It's all kind of intertwined, because that's just how healing goes, right? But pillar 4 is rewiring your nervous system and your neural pathways to a new version of yourself. And this speaks to those people who you mentioned who win the lottery, and then a year from later, they're bankrupt. And it's like, why is that? And it's because their nervous system didn't have the capacity to hold all of that, because their identity was, my family's poor. We've always been poor. Well, they get this money and they're running the story. My family's poor. We've always been poor. So what do? They act in alignment with that identity, and they get rid of their money. So we have to rewire your story around money and your relationship with money. And that's where doing a lot of subconscious clearing, energy work, parts work, like I do multiple modalities. And then pillar 5 is to regulate your nervous system. And that's using tools to regulate. So like when you sit down for a money date, you start to feel anxious and your body starts going into like a sympathetic state or going into shutdown. And it's like, okay, what can I do to regulate my nervous system to signal safety to it, to let it know it's okay? We're just at a computer. We're just looking at numbers. There's no lion coming to eat us. We're going to be fine, right? So there's steps, or pillars, right, that help us to shift and change that relationship with money so that you can live in alignment with your archetype, and so that it can feel safe to receive money, so that it can feel safe to ask money wherever is the challenge for you. And so it's this beautiful process. And for me, the foundation is understanding your money archetypes and embodying the strengths and the empowering versions of your money archetypes.
Oh, love that. And I can really see how that is the starting piece. And then, it's about understanding, well, how can we reprogram some of those bits so that you're not just running on your default programming, the story that you've had your whole life, which has obviously got you to where you are. But if it's somewhere else that we want to be, then something's got to shift and change, right? otherwise we're going to be just sort of continuing along in that same place. Thank you so much, Heather. This has just been amazing. I know that you've got so much to share, and I could talk to you about this for so long. But I think this has been a great conversation. And is there anything that you wanted to leave us with before we finish off? Is there any kind of final words of wisdom, advice?
If you're struggling in your relationship with money, know that you are not alone. I have not had a great relationship with money most of my life. And I know that now that I understand my money personality, I know that it is entirely possible to create lots of wealth as I'm living in my strengths. And if I could do it, I know that anyone else could do it. And I think about, as somebody who never liked cooking, never wanted anything to do with the kitchen, who became a chef, then opened up a specialty bakery. I'm like, oh, if I could do that, then I can do anything. So if you're thinking, I don't know if I can heal my relationship with money, look back over your life and see how you've made changes and use that as evidence to go forward. Because if you were somebody who once didn't know how to go to the bathroom on a toilet, and now you've become that person, which is all of us, then there is hope that you can change your relationship with money. Like we can all shift and change it. It's entirely possible for all of us.
I love that. Thank you so much. Now, where do you hang out on social media? Where can people find and connect with you if they would like to follow along?
So I'm on Instagram the most. I have a Facebook page, but I just push my Instagram to there. But I'm on Instagram the most, so you can find me there. It's Heather_M_Esposito. You can drop the link in the show notes. I know it's a little bit harder, but that's where I am the most.
Amazing. That's so cool. And we will have the quiz there as well. So make sure you scroll down and go and find out what your money archetypes are. It's I just love every little piece that you learn about yourself. It's just sort of adds to your own awareness. And it's interesting then when you can reflect on that, really the insights that you can dig up on what's going on in your life right now and why things are the way they are. And I always believe in, the more we can learn about ourselves, just, the more we can grow, right? You kind of have to know where you are in order to be able to move somewhere else. So this is a really great one. Thank you for sharing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Thank you.